Princess Zyra stood at the observation deck of the royal starship Valathros, her crystalline blue skin catching the light of 3 distant suns. Her forearms moved gracefully as she adjusted the ceremonial robes that marked her status among the Kethmori people. The flowing fabric, woven with threads that sparkled like captured starlight, draped elegantly over her tall, slender form. Her large, violet eyes focused on the view screen, showing Earth's small blue marble floating in the darkness of space. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn to know it was Marcus. After 6 months of companionship, she had grown familiar with his quiet, careful way of moving. The humans, she had learned, were such fragile creatures compared to her own people. "The council meeting is in an hour," Marcus said softly, his voice carrying that peculiar warmth that had first drawn her attention. "Are you ready for this?" Zyra finally turned to face him. Marcus Chen stood, barely reaching her shoulder, his dark hair slightly disheveled as always. His brown eyes held concern, and she noticed the way his hands fidgeted with the simple clothes he preferred to wear. Unlike the elaborate garments of her people, Marcus dressed plainly in what he called jeans and a shirt. The sight of him always brought a mixture of affection and worry to her hearts. "I am as ready as one can be when presenting a mate who lacks the traditional qualifications," she replied, her translator converting her melodious Kethmori speech into his primitive Earth language. Marcus winced slightly at her words, and Zyra immediately regretted her honesty. She had not meant to wound him, but facts were facts. Among her people, strength was everything. Physical prowess, mental fortitude, and combat ability determined one's worth in society. Her previous suitors had been warriors who could tear through steel with their bare hands, telepaths who could crush minds with a thought, or generals who had conquered entire star systems. Marcus was none of these things. He was a translator and cultural liaison, assigned to help establish communication between Earth and the Kethmori Empire. When first contact had been made, he was intelligent, yes, and possessed a remarkable ability to understand languages and customs. But by Kethmori standards, he was utterly powerless. "I know what they think of humans," Marcus said, moving to stand beside her at the window. "Your people see us as little more than clever pets. Too weak to be warriors. Too limited to be scholars. Too short-lived to matter." Zyra's lower pair of arms reached out to touch his shoulder gently. "You matter to me. That is what counts." Oaf. But even as she said it, she wondered if her affection was enough. The High Council had been scandalized when she announced her intention to take Marcus as her mate. A princess of the royal bloodline, bonding with a human, it was unprecedented and, to many, unthinkable. Her people were ancient and powerful. The Kethmori had ruled vast swaths of the galaxy for millennia. Their empire built on strength and conquest. They were naturally stronger, faster, and more durable than humans. A single Kethmori warrior could lift several tons and move faster than human eyes could follow. Their technology was centuries ahead of Earth's primitive machines. When the Kethmori had first made contact with Earth, humanity had been terrified. They expected invasion, conquest, enslavement. Instead, the Empire had offered partnership. Humans, while weak, had shown potential as intermediaries and translators. They possessed a unique ability to understand and adapt to different cultures, making them valuable as diplomats and liaisons. Marcus had been among the first humans to serve in this capacity. Zyra had met him during a cultural exchange program, where he was helping to translate ancient Kethmori texts into human languages. His dedication, patience, and genuine curiosity about her people's history had impressed her. Unlike others who seemed intimidated by her status and power, Marcus had treated her simply as herself. Their friendship had grown slowly into something deeper. She had been fascinated by his different perspective on life, his creativity, and his gentle nature. He showed her human art, music, and literature. He taught her to appreciate the beauty in simplicity, something her own culture had forgotten in its pursuit of strength and dominance. But now, facing the Council's judgment, she questioned whether love was enough to overcome the vast differences between their peoples. The counselors will test you, she warned him. They will want to see if you possess any hidden strengths worthy of royal attention. Marcus nodded grimly. I know. I've been preparing. How does one prepare for tests designed for beings 10 times stronger and faster than yourself? By being clever, I suppose. It's all I have. The door to the observation deck slid open with a soft hiss, and Captain Vorthak entered. The massive Kethmori warrior's 4 arms carried ceremonial weapons, and his scarred blue skin spoke of countless battles. His eyes, a fierce orange that indicated his military caste, fixed on Marcus with obvious disdain. Princess, he said, his voice a low rumble. The council awaits. Zyra straightened, assuming the regal bearing her position demanded. Captain Vorthak, you will address my mate with appropriate respect. The warrior's expression didn't change. Of course, Your Highness. Though I wonder how long he will hold that title once the council sees what he truly is. Marcus stepped forward, surprising both Kethmori with his boldness. Captain, I understand your concerns about my worthiness. Your people value strength above all else, and by your standards, I am weak. But perhaps there are different kinds of strength that your tests don't measure. Vorthak's 4 eyes narrowed. Strength is strength, human. You either possess it or you do not. Pretty words will not make you a warrior. Maybe not, Marcus agreed. But they might make me something else entirely. The captain snorted and turned away. The council chamber. Now, as they walked through the corridors of the starship, Zyra noticed how the crew members they passed reacted to Marcus's presence. Some stared with curiosity, others with barely concealed disgust. A few younger Kethmori pointed and whispered among themselves. She felt a surge of protective anger but forced herself to remain composed. Any display of emotion now would only make things worse for Marcus. The ship itself was a marvel of Kethmori engineering. Crystalline walls pulsed with energy, and gravity generators maintained perfect stability despite their speed through hyperspace. The corridors were wide and tall, designed for beings much larger than humans. Marcus looked tiny beside the towering architecture, like a child in an adult's world. Are you nervous? She asked him quietly as they approached the council chamber. Terrified, he admitted. But I've been terrified before and survived. Besides, I have something they don't expect. What? He smiled mysteriously. Surprise. The council chamber was a vast circular room with crystalline walls that showed the swirling colors of hyperspace beyond. 12 tall chairs arranged in a semicircle housed the most powerful beings in the Kethmori Empire. Each counselor represented a different aspect of their society. Military, science, religion, commerce, and others. At the center sat High Counselor Thexanus, an ancient being whose skin had turned silver with age, and whose 8 arms marked him as one of the oldest bloodlines. Zyra and Marcus entered together, but protocol demanded they separate. She took her place on the platform reserved for royalty, while Marcus stood alone in the center of the chamber, dwarfed by the massive space around him. Princess Zyra, High Counselor Thexanus began, his voice echoing in the chamber. You have requested recognition of this human as your chosen mate. This is an unprecedented request that requires careful consideration. I understand, High Counselor, Zyra replied formally. I am prepared to answer any questions the council may have. Our questions are not for you, Princess. They are for him. The ancient being's multiple eyes focused on Marcus. Human. State your name and qualifications. Marcus stepped forward, his posture straight despite his obvious fear. I am Marcus Chen of Earth. I serve as a cultural liaison and translator between our peoples. I have studied Kethmori language, history, and customs for 3 years. I believe I understand and respect your culture, even if I cannot match your physical capabilities. I welve. Counselor Vaxthor, the military representative, leaned forward aggressively. Understanding and respect mean nothing without strength to back them. A mate of royal blood must be able to protect their partner and any offspring. How can you protect anyone when you cannot even protect yourself? With respect, Counselor, Marcus replied. Protection takes many forms. A warrior's strength can defend against external threats, but wisdom and understanding can prevent conflicts before they begin. Sometimes the greatest protection comes from knowing when not to fight. Several counselors exchanged dismissive glances. Counselor Nethra, representing the science caste, spoke next. You speak of wisdom, yet your people have barely achieved interstellar travel. Your technology is primitive, your understanding of the universe limited. What wisdom could you possibly offer to advance our civilization? Well so. Marcus was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. You're right that humans are technologically inferior to the Keth Mori. But we see the universe differently. Your people have grown powerful through conquest and dominance. You've achieved incredible things, but perhaps you've lost sight of other possibilities. Humans have learned to find strength in cooperation, beauty in imperfection, and hope in adversity. These perspectives might offer new solutions to old problems. High Counselor Thexanus raised one ancient hand. Words are easy to speak, human. Words require no strength, no sacrifice, no true commitment. If you truly wish to bond with our princess, you must demonstrate your worth through action. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. This was the moment Zyraeth had dreaded. The traditional trials were designed for Keth Mori physiology. No human could possibly pass them. I propose 3 tests, the High Counselor continued. Combat prowess, mental fortitude, and spiritual strength. These are the foundations upon which our civilization rests. Pass all 3, and you will have our blessing. Fail even one, and you will be deemed unworthy of royal marriage. Zyraeth wanted to protest, but protocol prevented her from speaking without permission. She could only watch as Marcus considered the impossible challenge before him. I accept, he said simply. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even she was surprised by his calm acceptance. Did he not understand what he was agreeing to? Counselor Vax Thor smiled grimly. Excellent. The first test begins immediately. You will face one of our junior warriors in single combat. Victory is not required, only that you demonstrate courage and fighting spirit worthy of respect. A section of the chamber floor slid away, revealing a circular arena below. As they descended to the combat level, Zyraeth felt her hearts racing with worry. She had seen Marcus exercise and knew he kept himself reasonably fit by human standards, but against even a junior Keth Mori warrior, he had no chance. The arena was stark and simple, a circular platform surrounded by energy barriers to contain the combat. Weapon racks lined the walls, displaying various traditional Keth Mori arms. The warrior who entered to face Marcus was young but still impressive by any standard. Krelvoth stood nearly 7 feet tall, his forearms corded with muscle, his blue skin unmarked by the scars that would come with experience. Choose your weapon, human, Krelvoth said, gesturing toward the racks. Marcus walked slowly around the arena, examining the available weapons. There were massive two-handed swords designed for four-armed fighters, energy lances that required incredible strength to wield effectively, and various exotic weapons whose purposes he could only guess at. Finally, he stopped at a rack that held simpler implements. His hand hovered over several options before settling on something that made Zyraeth's heart sink with despair. It was a simple sword, not one of the elaborate Keth Mori weapons, but a plain, straight-bladed weapon that looked almost primitive by comparison. The handle was wrapped in worn leather, and the steel showed signs of age and use. How had such a simple human weapon ended up among the ceremonial armaments? An interesting choice, Krelvoth said, selecting a traditional Keth Mori blade that hummed with energy. But I fear it will not serve you well. Marcus lifted the sword, and Zyraeth noticed something she had never seen before. His entire demeanor changed as his hands closed around the grip. The nervous, gentle scholar she knew disappeared, replaced by someone who held the weapon with unmistakable familiarity. Perhaps, Marcus said quietly, but it's been with me for a long time. The young warrior attacked immediately, moving with the fluid speed of his people. His energy blade cut through the air in a perfect arc, designed to end the fight quickly and mercifully. But Marcus was no longer where the blade fell. He had moved with a speed that shocked everyone watching. Not the supernatural quickness of the Kethmori, but something else, fluid, economical, precise. His simple sword met the energy blade in a shower of sparks, deflecting the strike with minimal effort. Krelvoth's four eyes widened with surprise, but he pressed his attack. His training told him that surprise was his enemy's only advantage. Four arms moved in perfect coordination, creating a web of strikes that should have been impossible for any two-armed being to counter. Marcus didn't try to counter them all. Instead, he moved like water, flowing around the attacks rather than meeting them head-on. When he did strike back, it was with surgical precision, his blade finding the tiny gaps in his opponent's guard with unerring accuracy. The watching counselors leaned forward in their seats. This was not what any of them had expected. The human was not trying to match his opponent's strength, he was using something else entirely. Zyra realized she was holding her breath. In all their time together, Marcus had never mentioned any martial training. He had never displayed any hint that he possessed such skills. Who was this person wielding a sword with such deadly grace? Krelvoth began to show frustration as his attacks repeatedly failed to connect. He increased his speed and aggression, his blade becoming a blur of energy as he sought to overwhelm his smaller opponent through sheer force. Marcus continued his fluid dance. But Zyra noticed something that sent ice through her veins. He was tiring. Human endurance could not match Kethmori's stamina indefinitely. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his movements, while still precise, were slowing incrementally. The young warrior sensed this too and pressed his advantage. His attacks became a storm of steel and energy, driving Marcus back toward the arena's edge. And then, something changed. Marcus stopped retreating. His sword, which had been moving defensively, suddenly shifted to offense. But this was not the wild desperation of a cornered animal, it was something far more dangerous. His blade moved in patterns that seemed almost alive, creating openings where none should exist. Krelvoth found himself forced to give ground as the human's attacks came from impossible angles, with increasing speed and precision. The turning point came when Marcus's sword found its mark. Not a killing blow, the combat was meant to test courage, not end lives, but a perfect strike that touched the warrior's throat with the flat of the blade before withdrawing. In traditional Kethmori combat, such a touch signified a fatal strike. The match was over. Krelvoth stepped back, his chest heaving with exhaustion and shock. I yield, he said, his voice carrying disbelief. The arena fell silent except for the sound of Marcus's ragged breathing. He lowered his sword, and once again became the gentle scholar Zyra thought she knew. But now she understood she had never truly known him at all. High Counselor Thexanus was the first to speak, his ancient voice carrying a note of surprise that had not been there before. Most unexpected. You fight with skills that surpass those of many seasoned warriors. Where did a mere translator learn such abilities? Marcus looked up at the council, his expression carefully neutral. Every human has a history, counselors. Mine is perhaps more complicated than most. Zyra felt a mixture of pride and confusion swirling in her hearts. Marcus had passed the first test spectacularly. But in doing so, he had revealed that he was not the person she thought she loved. Who was he really? And what other secrets lay hidden beneath his quiet exterior? Counselor Nethra leaned forward, her scientific curiosity clearly aroused. Your fighting style is unlike anything in our databases. The movements were fluid, efficient, and contained elements that suggest multiple martial traditions. This implies extensive training over many years. Yet our intelligence on Earth shows no warrior castes or military traditions that could produce such skills. Earth may be primitive by your standards, Marcus replied, but we have been fighting each other for millennia. Some of us have learned from that experience. The cryptic answer seemed to satisfy no one. But High Counselor Thexanus continued the proceedings. The first test is passed. But combat prowess alone does not make a worthy mate. For royalty, the second test will examine your mental fortitude. Counselor Yethmore, begin the preparation. As the arena was cleared and new equipment brought in, Zyra caught Marcus's eye. He gave her a small smile, but she could see the exhaustion in his face. The combat had taken more out of him than he wanted to show. More importantly, she realized that the gentle, peaceful man she had fallen in love with, was not the complete truth. There was a warrior hidden beneath the scholar's exterior, one who fought with skills that rivaled the best of her people. She found herself wondering what other surprises Marcus might reveal before this trial was over, and whether the man she thought she loved was real, or just another mask hiding someone far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The second test was about to begin, and already nothing was as it had seemed. The arena floor transformed before their eyes, as Kethmori technology reshaped the combat platform into something entirely different. Crystalline pillars rose from the surface, each one pulsing with a different color of light. Energy fields crackled between them, creating a maze of interconnected passages that seemed to shift and change even as they watched. Counselor Yeth Moore descended into the arena, her silver robes marking her as a representative of the mystic caste. Her 6 arms moved in complex patterns as she activated various controls, and her pale blue skin seemed to glow with inner light. Unlike the warriors, mystics had evolved different abilities: telepathy, precognition, and mental manipulation that made them formidable in their own way. "The second test measures mental fortitude," she announced, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in frequencies beyond human hearing. "You will enter the labyrinth of echoes, where your mind will be assaulted by illusions, false memories, and psychic attacks designed to break your concentration and resolve." Marcus stared at the shifting maze below, his face pale but determined. "What exactly am I supposed to accomplish in there?" "Reach the center," Yeth Moore replied simply. "The labyrinth will attempt to trap you with visions of your fears, your guilt, your deepest regrets. It will show you false paths that lead nowhere, and whisper lies designed to make you surrender. Most candidates require several attempts to succeed, if they succeed at all." Zyra Eth felt her heart sink. The Labyrinth of Echoes was one of the most challenging mental tests in Kethmori tradition. It had been designed to break the minds of beings far more psychologically resilient than humans. Even some of her own people had emerged from the labyrinth permanently damaged by the experience. "And if I fail?" Marcus asked. "The labyrinth will not harm you physically," Yeth Moore assured him. "But failure means you lack the mental strength necessary to stand beside royalty. A weak mind can be corrupted, manipulated, or broken by our enemies. A princess's mate must be as strong mentally as he is physically." Marcus nodded slowly, then surprised everyone by asking, "May I keep the sword?" Several counselors exchanged glances. The request was unusual. The mental test was traditionally undertaken without weapons, but High Counselor Thexanus gestured his approval. "If it provides you comfort, you may carry it. But remember, in the labyrinth, your mind is your only true weapon." As Marcus descended into the maze, Zyra Eth watched the crystalline pillars begin to pulse faster. She knew the technology was reading his brainwaves, mapping his thoughts and memories to create personalized torments. The labyrinth would become a reflection of his inner demons, designed to exploit every weakness and fear. The council members settled in to watch the proceedings on multiple displays that showed Marcus's progress from different angles. His vital signs appeared on one screen: heart rate, brain activity, stress hormones. Everything looked normal as he entered the first passage. For several minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Marcus walked through the crystalline corridors at a steady pace, the sword still hanging at his side. The monitoring equipment showed elevated stress levels, but nothing beyond what might be expected from the situation. Then the first illusion struck. The walls around Marcus suddenly shifted, transforming into the interior of what appeared to be a human building. The stark cleanliness of the Kethmori ship was replaced by worn concrete and flickering fluorescent lights. The temperature seemed to drop, though Zyra Eth knew this was only in Marcus's perception. On the screens, she could see his heart rate spike dramatically. His breathing became rapid and shallow, and he pressed himself against one wall as if trying to hide. Sweat beaded on his forehead as his eyes darted around the transformed corridor. "Interesting," Counselor Nethra observed. "The labyrinth has accessed a memory of considerable trauma. See how his stress responses indicate genuine terror, not mere concern." "What is he seeing?" Zyra Eth asked, forgetting protocol in her worry. Yeth Moore studied the readouts with professional interest. The labyrinth creates personalized visions based on each individual's deepest fears and most painful memories. I cannot tell you exactly what he perceives, but his reactions suggest it involves a location from his past that holds great significance. On the screens, Marcus remained frozen against the wall for nearly 10 minutes. His lips moved as if he were speaking to someone, but the audio pickups caught only whispered words that made no sense. Not again. They're all gone. Should have been faster. Then, gradually, something changed in his posture. His breathing steadied, and his hand moved to the sword at his side. Not to draw it, but simply to touch the familiar weight of it. His jaw set in determination, and he pushed himself away from the wall. "No," he said clearly enough for the pickups to catch. That was then. This is now. The illusion shattered like glass, revealing the crystalline corridor once more. But the labyrinth was far from finished with him. The next assault was different, more subtle but potentially more devastating. The walls became transparent, and Marcus found himself looking at scenes of his life with Zyra, but these were distorted versions, showing her laughing with other suitors, dismissing his affections as amusing but ultimately meaningless. He watched himself depicted as a pet, a curiosity that she would eventually grow tired of and discard. The false Zyra in the visions spoke words that cut deeper than any blade. "Did you really think I could love something so weak? So inferior? You're nothing but a novelty, Marcus. When I tire of your quaint human customs, I'll find a real mate." 2 p.m. Zyra wanted to scream at the screens, to somehow tell him that the visions were lies. But she could only watch as Marcus's face went through a complex series of emotions: pain, doubt, anger, and finally something that looked almost like relief. "I know you better than that," he said to the illusory Zyra, "and if you were the kind of person who could say those things, then I wouldn't love you anyway." Again, the illusion cracked and fell away. For the next hour, the labyrinth threw everything it could at Marcus's mind. It showed him battles he had lost, comrades he had failed to save, and choices he regretted. It whispered that he was a fraud, a killer pretending to be a scholar, a weapon disguised as a diplomat. Each attack seemed more vicious than the last, but Marcus continued to move forward. Sometimes he paused. Sometimes he argued with visions only he could see. But he never stopped advancing toward the center of the maze. The counselors watched with growing amazement. Few had ever progressed so steadily through the labyrinth on their first attempt. Even fewer had maintained their sanity while doing so. "His mental patterns are extraordinary," Yethmore reported. "He shows signs of severe psychological trauma in his past combat stress, survivor's guilt, and what appears to be extensive conditioning for mental resistance. But he has integrated these experiences rather than being broken by them. What kind of training produces such mental discipline?" Counselor Vax Thor asked, his military background making him particularly interested in the answer. "The kind that comes from surviving hells that would destroy most people," Yethmore replied grimly. "This human has seen darkness that goes beyond normal warfare. His mind has been forged in fires that would shatter most beings, including many of our own people." As Marcus approached the final chamber at the labyrinth's center, the attacks intensified one last time. The walls around him erupted into scenes of a burning city under an alien sky. Explosions rocked the ground beneath his feet, and the screams of the dying filled the air. In the distance, massive shapes moved through the smoke, things that were definitely not human and definitely not friendly. But this time, instead of cowering or fighting the vision, Marcus did something unexpected. He drew his sword, the moment the blade cleared its sheath. The visions changed. The burning city was still there. But now Marcus moved through it, with deadly purpose. His sword cut through shadowy enemies that seemed to dissolve at his touch, and gradually the screams of terror became cries of rally and hope. "He's not fighting the vision," Yethmore said in amazement. "He's changing it. He's taking control of the labyrinth itself." The final chamber opened before Marcus, its crystalline walls reflecting his image in countless facets. At the center stood a pedestal, with a simple crystal formation, the goal of the labyrinth. But as he reached for it, One final test manifested. The crystal showed him a choice. He could take it and pass the test, but doing so would reveal his true identity to the council. All the secrets he had kept hidden, all the careful disguises he had maintained, would be stripped away. They would know exactly who and what he was. Or he could fail the test, spare Zyra the complications of the truth, and walk away from her forever. Marcus stared at the crystal for a long moment, his face cycling through emotions too complex to read. Finally, he reached out and grasped it firmly. Light exploded through the labyrinth as every wall became transparent. The maze dissolved around him, leaving him standing alone in the arena's center with the crystal still glowing in his hand. The silence in the council chamber was deafening. High Counselor Thexanus was the first to speak, his ancient voice carrying new respect. In 1,200 years of trials, only 17 candidates have ever taken control of the labyrinth itself. Most of those were our greatest mystics and warriors. You have passed the second test in a manner that exceeds all expectations. Marcus looked up at the council, and Zyra saw something in his eyes that sent a chill through her. It was the look of a man who had made a decision that would change everything. Before we proceed to the third test, he said clearly, I think it's time you knew who you're really dealing with. He reached into his jacket and withdrew something that made several counselors gasp. It was a data crystal containing what appeared to be classified files information that humans should not have possessed. My name is Marcus Chen, and I am a cultural liaison. That's all true. But it's not the whole truth. He inserted the crystal into a port on the arena floor, and holographic displays sprang to life around him. I am also Commander Marcus Chen, formerly of the Terran Defense Corps, 7th Special Operations Division. I was part of humanity's first contact with the Keth Mori Empire, but not as a translator. I was leading the military assessment team. The displays showed images that shocked even the battle-hardened counselors. Human soldiers moving through alien environments with deadly efficiency. Weapons technology that was far more advanced than anything they had seen from Earth. And at the center of it all, Marcus younger, harder, wearing the uniform of an elite military unit that officially didn't exist. For 3 years before official first contact, small groups of humans were conducting reconnaissance and evaluation missions throughout Keth Mori space. We were preparing for the possibility of invasion, trying to understand your capabilities, and find your weaknesses. Zyra felt the floor drop out from under her world. Everything she thought she knew about Marcus, about their relationship, about humanity itself, was crumbling around her. We discovered that while humans couldn't match your physical strength or advanced technology, we excelled in areas your people had largely abandoned. Stealth, infiltration, asymmetric warfare, and psychological operations. We became very, very good at being invisible when we needed to be. Counselor Vaxthor leaned forward aggressively. You're telling us that Earth has been conducting espionage operations against the Empire? That first contact was a deception? Not entirely, Marcus replied. The decision to make peaceful contact was genuine, but it was made only after we determined that a war between our peoples would be catastrophic for both sides. Earth couldn't win a conventional conflict, but we could make any invasion so costly that victory would be meaningless. He gestured to the displays, which now showed technical specifications that made the scientific counselors sit up in alarm. Human warfare evolved differently than yours. We learned to fight enemies who were bigger, stronger, and better equipped than ourselves. We became specialists in turning superior force against itself. And the sword? High Counselor Thexanus asked, though Zyra suspected he already knew the answer. Marcus touched the weapon at his side. A masterwork blade forged by human craftsmen who have been perfecting their art for thousands of years. It's cut through Keth Mori armor, energy shields, and combat robots that your people thought were invulnerable. In the right hands, it's deadlier than any energy weapon. The council chamber erupted in angry voices as the implications sank in. Humans weren't the harmless, primitive species they had believed. They were potential predators who had been studying the Empire's weaknesses for years. But Zyra was focused on something else entirely. Through all the revelations, all the shocking truths about military operations and hidden agendas, one question burned in her mind. Did you know who I was when we first met? She asked, her voice cutting through the shouting. Was I part of your mission? Marcus turned to look at her, and for a moment the warrior facade dropped away, revealing the gentle scholar she had fallen in love with. I knew you were a princess. I was supposed to gather intelligence on royal family dynamics and succession politics. Her heart shattered. It had all been a lie. But, Marcus continued, I fell in love with you on the third day we spent together. Everything after that was real. The mission ended the moment I realized I cared more about your happiness than Earth's strategic interests. How can we believe anything you say now? She whispered. Marcus looked around the council chamber at the faces filled with anger, suspicion, and betrayal. Then he made another decision that surprised everyone. He knelt down on one knee and placed his sword on the floor before him in the traditional Kethmori gesture of absolute surrender. Because I'm giving you the choice, he said simply. Everything I've told you, all the intelligence I've gathered, all the Earth's military secrets, take it all. I've betrayed my own species to prove that my love for Zyra-Eth is genuine. The chamber fell silent again as the magnitude of what he was offering sank in. The military secrets alone would give the Kethmori Empire enormous advantages if hostilities ever developed between the species. You would commit treason against your own people for the sake of love? Counselor Yethmore asked, her psychic senses clearly trying to detect deception. I already have, Marcus replied. The moment I revealed my identity, I became guilty of treason under Earth law. I can never go home again. I can never see my family or my world. All I have left is Zyra-Eth, and the hope that she might still want me despite everything I've hidden from her. High Counselor Thexanus raised his hand for silence. This revelation changes everything. We must consider not just whether you are worthy of our princess, but whether allowing this union serves the Empire's interests. With respect, High Counselor, Marcus said, still kneeling. There's still a third test. Perhaps you should complete your evaluation before making such decisions. The ancient being's multiple eyes studied the human with new interest. Indeed, you have shown combat prowess that rivals our warriors and mental fortitude that exceeds most of our people. But the final test measures something else entirely, spiritual strength, the ability to sacrifice everything for a higher purpose. Marcus looked up at Zyra-Eth, and she saw love, regret, and determination warring in his expression. What did you have in mind? The test of truth, Thexanus replied gravely. You will be connected to our most advanced psychic resonators. Every thought, every memory, every emotion will be laid bare before this council. We will see not just your actions, but your true motivations. If there is any deception, any hidden agenda, any trace of betrayal in your heart, we will find it. Several counselors looked surprised. The test of truth was rarely used because it was so invasive and potentially damaging. Some subjects never fully recovered from having their minds completely opened to examination. And if I pass, Marcus asked, then you will have proven beyond any doubt that your love is genuine and your loyalty unquestionable. But the test may destroy your mind in the process. Are you willing to risk everything for the chance to marry our princess? Marcus stood up slowly, his decision already made. Yes. But first, I want Zyra-Eth to know one more thing. He turned to face her, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. I love you. Not because of your title or your position, not for any strategic advantage, and not because I was ordered to. I love you because you're brilliant and kind and brave and beautiful. You see possibilities where others see only problems. You made me believe that maybe peace was possible between our peoples. Tears she couldn't control ran down her cheeks. Marcus, I know you may never forgive me for the deception. I know I may die in the next few minutes. But I need you to know that every moment we spent together was real for me. Every smile, every conversation, every dream we shared about the future, all of it was genuine. He faced the council again, his resolve absolute. I'm ready for the test. As the psychic resonators were prepared, Zyra-Eth realized that she was about to learn the absolute truth about the man she loved. The question was whether that truth would save them both or destroy everything they had built together. The third test was beginning, and nothing would ever be the same again. The psychic resonators descended from the chamber ceiling like crystalline spiders, their multifaceted surfaces pulsing with energy that made the air itself seem to hum with power. Each device was a masterwork of Kethmori psychic technology, designed to penetrate the deepest layers of consciousness and lay bare every secret a mind might hold. Marcus stood perfectly still as the resonators positioned themselves around him, forming a complex pattern that would allow complete mental scanning. Zyra Eth watched from her platform, her four hands clenched so tightly that her knuckles had turned white against her blue skin. She had seen the test of truth performed only once before, and the subject had emerged as a mindless shell, his consciousness shattered by the invasive probing. "Final preparations complete," announced Counselor Yeth Moore, her 6 arms moving in precise patterns over her control interface. "Commander Chen, be aware that this process cannot be stopped once it begins. The resonators will strip away every barrier, every defense, every hidden corner of your psyche. Some minds break under such exposure." Marcus nodded calmly. "I understand. Begin when you're ready." High Counselor Thexanus leaned forward in his ancient chair. "Before we proceed, there is one final consideration. The test of truth will reveal not only your personal motivations, but also any additional military secrets you may possess. Information that could significantly impact relations between our peoples." "I know," Marcus replied. "I've already crossed that line. At this point, there's nothing left to hide." The resonators activated with a sound like singing crystal. Beams of energy engulfed Marcus, and immediately his body went rigid as his consciousness was forcibly opened to examination. On the displays around the chamber, images began to form, memories, thoughts, and emotions made visible for all to see. The first images were of Marcus's childhood on Earth. A modest home in a place called Colorado, snow-covered mountains in the distance, and a family that clearly loved him. But even these early memories carried an undercurrent of something darker. Young Marcus was already training not just in academics, but in combat skills that seemed far beyond what a normal child should know. "Interesting," Counselor Nethra observed. "He was identified for special training at an unusually young age. See how the education patterns suggest preparation for long-term deep cover operations." The memories shifted to his teenage years, showing intensive training in a facility hidden deep underground. Languages, combat techniques, cultural studies, survival skills, and psychological conditioning, all designed to create the perfect infiltrator. But what struck Zyra Eth most was the loneliness in these memories. Marcus had been cut off from normal human society, trained to be a weapon disguised as a diplomat. Then came the memories that explained his earlier breakdown in the labyrinth. War, not the clean, technological warfare the Kethmori practiced, but brutal, desperate conflicts where humans fought against impossible odds. The images showed Marcus leading special operations teams against enemies that were clearly not human, insectoid creatures with technology even more advanced than the Kethmoris. "The Zephyrians," High Counselor Thexanus breathed. "These are memories of the Zephyrian War." Zyra Eth felt ice in her veins. The Zephyrian War had been a massive conflict at the edge of known space, where an insectoid species had attempted to consume entire star systems. The Kethmori Empire had fought them to a standstill, but at enormous cost. She had never known that humans had been involved in that conflict. The memories showed the truth. While the major powers fought the Zephyrians in massive fleet engagements, small teams of humans had been conducting guerrilla operations behind enemy lines. They had infiltrated Zephyrian hive ships, sabotaged their supply lines, and assassinated key leaders. It had been suicide missions, disguised as special operations. Marcus had led dozens of such missions. She watched him and his teams penetrating alien environments that would have killed most Kethmori, using primitive weapons and cunning to achieve objectives that conventional forces could not. She saw him making impossible choices, sacrificing some team members to save others, completing missions at horrific personal cost, carrying the weight of decisions that no one should have to make. But she also saw something else. Marcus had never killed unnecessarily. Even in the most desperate circumstances, he had sought to minimize casualties and protect innocents. His skills were deadly, but his heart remained compassionate. The most telling memory came from the war's end. Marcus stood in the ruins of a Zephyrian hive ship, surrounded by the bodies of his fallen team. He had been the sole survivor of what was supposed to be a simple reconnaissance mission. As he transmitted the intelligence that would help end the war, tears streamed down his face as he spoke the names of each fallen comrade. "I understand now," Counselor Vax Thor said quietly. "His psychological profile makes sense. He carries the guilt of a survivor, the burden of a leader who lost those under his command." The memories moved forward, showing Marcus's transition from warrior to diplomat after the war's end. He had requested transfer to cultural liaison duties, seeking a way to prevent future conflicts through understanding rather than violence. His superiors had agreed, seeing an opportunity to place their most skilled operative in a position where he could gather intelligence while promoting peace. Then came the memories of first contact with the Kethmori Empire. Marcus had indeed been part of the initial assessment team, but the resonators revealed the complexity of his mission. Yes, he was supposed to gather intelligence, but he was also genuinely seeking ways to avoid another devastating war. The memories showed him studying Kethmori culture with fascination and respect. Unlike his superiors, who saw only potential threats and weaknesses to exploit, Marcus had recognized the beauty and wisdom in alien ways of thinking. He had argued repeatedly for peaceful contact, even when military leaders wanted to prepare for preemptive strikes. And then came the memory that mattered most to Zyra Eth, their first meeting. She watched from Marcus's perspective as he entered the Cultural Exchange Center and saw her for the first time. The resonators revealed his immediate thoughts: initial nervousness about meeting royalty, professional interest in her role as a cultural ambassador, and then something that made her hearts race. He had been genuinely attracted to her from that first moment, not because of her status or any strategic value, but because of the way she had smiled when explaining a particularly complex piece of Kethmori poetry. The memory showed his growing fascination with her intelligence, her curiosity about other cultures, and her unexpected sense of humor. More importantly, the resonators revealed the exact moment when his mission had become secondary to his feelings. It had been during their fourth conversation, when Zyra Eth had expressed her hope that humans and Kethmori could become friends rather than just allies. Marcus had realized that he wanted to help make her dreams come true, regardless of what Earth's government might prefer. From that point forward, every memory showed him struggling between duty and love. He had continued gathering intelligence, but increasingly selective about what he reported. Sensitive information that might be used to harm the Kethmori had simply not made it into his reports. He had been protecting the Empire from his own people. The resonators probed deeper. Searching for any trace of deception or hidden agenda, they found none. Marcus's love for Zyra Eth was absolute and genuine. His desire to protect both their peoples from unnecessary conflict was equally real. The man who had knelt before the council and offered to commit treason was exactly what he appeared to be: someone willing to sacrifice everything for love and peace. But the resonators revealed one final secret, one that changed everything once again. Deep in Marcus's memories, protected by layers of conditioning and psychological barriers, lay classified information about Earth's true capabilities. Not just military secrets, but technological advances that humanity had kept hidden from all alien contact. Defensive technologies that could neutralize Kethmori weapons, stealth systems that could make human ships invisible to Empire sensors, and most shocking of all, evidence that Earth had been monitoring the entire galaxy far longer than anyone suspected. Humanity wasn't the primitive species everyone believed them to be. They were patient, careful, and extraordinarily good at appearing less advanced than they actually were. They had been watching, learning, and preparing for centuries before making official contact with any alien species. The revelation sent shockwaves through the council chamber. If the memories were accurate, Earth represented a potential threat on par with any major galactic power. The decision to pursue peaceful relations suddenly looked far more strategic and far less altruistic. But the resonators also revealed Marcus's thoughts about these secrets. He was terrified of them. He had seen what human technology could do in the wrong hands, and he desperately wanted to find a way to prevent his people from becoming a threat to the galaxy. His love for Zyra Eth was partly motivated by hope that she could help him bridge the gap between species and prevent future conflicts. As the test of truth neared its conclusion, One final layer of Marcus's consciousness was exposed his deepest fears and motivations. The resonators revealed that he had volunteered for the Cultural Liaison Program not just to serve his people, but because he was tired of being a weapon. He wanted to be someone who built connections instead of destroying them. His greatest fear wasn't death or exposure, it was that he might be forced to use his skills against people he had come to care about. The thought of having to fight the Kethmori, possibly even to harm Zyra-Eth herself if their peoples went to war, was what truly terrified him. The resonators finally shut down, leaving Marcus swaying on his feet but still conscious. The complete examination had lasted 3 hours, though it had felt like days to everyone watching. The displays around the chamber gradually faded, taking with them the most intimate portrait of a human mind that any Kethmori had ever witnessed. High Counselor Thexanus was the first to break the silence that followed. In my lifetime, I have witnessed the test of truth performed 47 times. Never have I seen a mind so thoroughly examined while remaining fundamentally intact. Your mental discipline is extraordinary, Commander Chen. Marcus struggled to speak, his voice hoarse from the ordeal. Did I pass? You passed far more than a test, Counselor Yethmore replied. You have shown us that genuine love is possible between our species, that trust can exist despite vast differences in power and culture. But you have also revealed truths that will require careful consideration. Zyra-Eth could remain silent no longer. The test is complete. What is the Council's decision? Thexanus looked around at his fellow counselors, reading their expressions with the skill of centuries. Before we render judgment, there is one more matter to address. Commander Chen, you have revealed military secrets that could significantly impact the balance of power in this galaxy. What do you propose we do with this information? Marcus straightened with visible effort. I propose we use it to build real peace, instead of just managing tension. Both our species have capabilities that could destroy each other, but we also have the potential to achieve things that neither could accomplish alone. He looked directly at Zyra-Eth as he continued. I've seen what happens when superior technology meets desperate cunning. The Zephyrian War showed me that no species is truly invulnerable, no matter how advanced. But I've also seen what we can accomplish when we fight together for something greater than ourselves. You're suggesting an alliance based on mutual vulnerability rather than trust? Counselor Vaxthor asked. I'm suggesting an alliance based on mutual respect and shared goals, Marcus corrected. The vulnerability is just what will keep us honest with each other. Zyra-Eth stepped forward from her platform, protocol forgotten in the emotion of the moment. Marcus, I need to know something the test didn't cover. After everything that's been revealed, after all the secrets and lies and hidden agendas, do you still love me? Not the princess, not the symbol of peace between our peoples, but me? Marcus turned to face her, and despite his exhaustion, his eyes were clear and certain. Zyra-Eth, I fell in love with you because you laughed at a terrible joke I made about Kethmori poetry. I stayed in love with you because you saw possibilities I never imagined. I'm still in love with you because you're brave enough to ask that question, after everything you've learned about me. She felt tears streaming down her face again. And I love you because you chose to tell the truth, even though you knew it might destroy us both. High Counselor Thexanus rose slowly from his ancient chair, his multiple arms raised in the gesture of formal pronouncement. The Council has witnessed something unprecedented today. A human has passed all 3 trials with a demonstration of strength that equals or exceeds our greatest champions. More importantly, we have seen proof that love can transcend the boundaries between species. The chamber held its collective breath. However, the High Counselor continued, the revelations of this day have implications that extend far beyond royal marriage. The information revealed in the test of truth will require extensive discussion among the full Imperial Senate. Zyra-Eth felt her heart sink. It sounded like a polite way of delaying indefinitely, but Thexanus wasn't finished. Therefore, I propose the following. Princess Zyra-Eth and Commander Chen will be wed with full ceremony and recognition. Their marriage will serve as the foundation for a new era of cooperation between our peoples. But Commander Chen will also serve as the first official human ambassador to the Kethmori Empire. With full diplomatic immunity and the authority to negotiate on behalf of Earth. The chamber erupted in surprised voices Several counselors seemed shocked by the decision, but none appeared to object strongly. Marcus looked stunned. "You're offering me diplomatic status after everything I've revealed?" "Because of everything you've revealed," Thexanus corrected. "You have demonstrated that you understand both our peoples well enough to serve as a bridge between them. Your personal investment in peace makes you uniquely qualified for the role." Counselor Yethmore stepped forward. "The psychic resonators revealed one final detail that we have not discussed publicly. Commander Chen, your mind shows evidence of a very rare form of telepathic sensitivity, not true psychic ability like our mystics possess, but an intuitive understanding of others that allows you to predict behavior and motivations with remarkable accuracy." She looked around the chamber significantly. "This ability is what made him such an effective military operative, but it also makes him ideally suited for diplomacy. He can sense deception and genuine intent in ways that even our most skilled negotiators cannot." Zyraeth stared at Marcus in amazement. Even after everything they had learned about him, there were still surprises. "You never mentioned that you could read people so well." Marcus shrugged tiredly. "I never thought of it as anything special. It just seemed like common sense most of the time." "It is decidedly not common sense," Counselor Nethra interjected. "The ability you possess is documented in perhaps 1 in 10 million humans. Combined with your other skills, it makes you a remarkably valuable asset for maintaining peace between our species." High Counselor Thexanus gestured for attention. "There is one final condition to this arrangement. As ambassador, Commander Chen will be required to establish a permanent human embassy within our space. This will serve both as a diplomatic facility and as a way to monitor any future developments in human capabilities." "Essentially, you want me to be both ambassador and hostage," Marcus observed with dark humor. "Essentially, yes," Thexanus agreed without apology. "Your presence will ensure that Earth takes our alliance seriously, while your position will give you the authority to prevent misunderstandings from escalating into conflicts." Zyraeth realized what they were really offering. Marcus would become the most important human in the galaxy, responsible for managing relations between two species that could easily destroy each other. It was an enormous responsibility and an equally enormous honor. "What do you say, Ambassador Chen?" Thexanus asked formally. Marcus looked around the chamber, then at Zyraeth. A slow smile spread across his face, the first genuine expression of happiness she had seen from him since the trials began. "I say that I came here hoping to win the right to marry the woman I love, and instead I'm being offered the chance to help create the peace she's always dreamed of." He reached out to take Zyraeth's hand. "How could I possibly refuse?" The council chamber erupted in formal approval, but Zyraeth barely heard it. She was too focused on the feeling of Marcus's hand in hers, and the knowledge that their future together would be even more amazing than either of them had dared to hope. 3 days later, the wedding ceremony took place aboard the flagship of the Kethmori royal fleet. It was a magnificent affair that blended traditions from both cultures, broadcast throughout the galaxy as a symbol of the new era of cooperation between humans and Kethmori. Zyraeth wore robes of starlight silver that had been in her family for generations, while Marcus stood beside her in a formal uniform that combined elements of both military traditions. The sword that had revealed his true nature hung at his side, no longer a hidden weapon, but an honored symbol of his commitment to protecting both their peoples. As they exchanged vows in both languages, promising to stand together against whatever challenges the future might bring, Zyraeth reflected on how wrong she had been about him from the beginning. She had thought he was powerless, when in fact he possessed skills that rivaled the greatest warriors of her people. She had believed he was simple, when he was actually one of the most complex and capable individuals she had ever met. She had assumed he was ordinary, when he was the bridge that would connect two civilizations. But most importantly, she had thought she understood what it meant to love someone, when Marcus had shown her that true love meant being willing to sacrifice everything, even your own identity, for the happiness and safety of another person. As the ceremony concluded and they turned to face their future together, Zyraeth realized that she was about to embark on the greatest adventure of her life. Not as a princess who had chosen an unsuitable mate, but as a woman who had found a partner worthy of changing the galaxy. The alien princess had indeed underestimated her human mate, But in the end, that had made their love story all the more remarkable. Behind them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, and somewhere in the vast cosmos, two species began the long journey toward understanding each other. At the center of it all, a former warrior turned diplomat and a princess who dreamed of peace stood hand in hand, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The universe was about to discover that love, properly applied, might just be the most powerful force of all.